For me, I really wanted to share more and more of the backstory of what's brought me forth here. And it really started about a year before the tragic passing of a sibling that you know about. And some people haven't heard that experience as it's transformed me considerably. And about a year before my brother passed, he was already in deep turmoil, and I was starting to suffer without knowing it. Most of my life, honestly, I was numb, I was desensitized. I personally believe many of us in society have undergone some form of trauma or stress or experience, and many are hindered and don't know it. And so I was very emotionally handicapped, and I didn't really see this, and now I can see it in hindsight. So really it didn't start when my brother passed. It started the year before. I was practicing law and I had a mediation practice. And I actually started off by getting a DUI. For those of my colleagues that are overseas, that's a basically getting pulled over by a police officer for being too intoxicated behind the wheel. And it was ironic because I didn't really partake in drinking that often. And this was a very interesting and unusual anecdote, because this experience ended with me in a jail cell for the night. And in this holding cell, there was a homeless gentleman who was sharing with another inmate, or whatever you want to call it, in the space we were sharing, didn't have any interactions with me. And he started to share some spiritual teachings with this young man next to me. And then out of the blue, he turns to me and he literally says two statements: how have you been out of integrity, and how have you harnessed your essence? Turns away and starts crying. For me, I knew in that moment that was what we would call a miracle, that there was, some greater power speaking through this being. And I didn't listen. Fast forward a year, I started to have dis-ease of my own, which in 2016, I found out I was actually burned out and pretty close to, experiencing deathly symptoms. And in 2015, about March, my brother's symptoms and condition and life circumstances had really gotten to a very dark place. And I wasn't emotionally equipped. I was dealing with my own suffering and numbing it. And literally March 2015 was the last time I saw him. And he passed away and ended up taking his own life in July, actually the day before Independence Day. So it was an interesting experience because I was called to the hospital, didn't know what was happening. And as I found myself over my brother's lifeless body, the first thoughts that came forward were how big of an asshole I was, because I hadn't seen this being in so long. And in fact, the last time I saw him, we had an interesting interaction that centered around me not being able to handle being around him, because I was so used to being a type A and in control, and my profession bolstered this, that to be around more that mortality and that that dis-ease that was spiraling out of control, I couldn't handle it. So the last interaction I actually had with him directly, I said to him, "It's hard to watch this," and he actually said to me, "It's okay. Everything is as it ought to be." And so 2015 was a very, very traumatic year, where then after July, I ended up numbing myself with many intoxicants. And really, again, it was not until hindsight that I realized, oh, this was simply a pattern that I exaggerated. I was already numbing and masking and suppressing and in disassociation. And it wasn't until late 2016, after my eldest sibling, who's an integrative physician in his own right, does a lot of powerful work, he shared with me some insights, which then propelled me deeper down my healing journey. And I caught myself going through necrosis. I literally had a hole, as I've told you, in my head, had adrenal fatigue. I mean, I had really bad dis-ease. And it took me really 2 years now, that end of 2019 is really when I started to feel more whole, more happy, and more centered. And, that's when things got really interesting, because I did kick and scream. I did, this is literally a hot seat. I did kick and scream. And that's another thing for me in hindsight, that I wish I had somebody like earlier to show me that, the key to all of this was allowing. The key to all of this was to surrender. The key to all this was to see the natural process of life as deconstruction, as death, preceding rebirth, preceding expansion. And it was a challenge. And I had a great many teachers and guides. And 2017 is a turning point. My parents had an accident as well. My father lost his eyesight. And then my mother almost also got pretty injured. And I was then tasked with not only dealing with my own healing, I chose to then step in and help support my parents as well. And that was an interesting point, because that also brought me back into my childhood, I guess, situations, and that helped me also have catharsis. And the reason I bring this up is because the whole time I was not aware of what trauma actually meant. I didn't have any, God forbid, molestation. Emotionally, I wasn't, beat or traumatized in the extent that, God forbid, some people experience. I still realized that I was sensitive. I still realized that, unfortunately, the family circumstances, the cultural circumstances did not allow for me to actually own my sensitivity. So for most of my life, up until now, I'm going into 38, I was disassociated and I was in trauma and I didn't know it. And that was, for me, the most alarming, that I wasn't alone, that now this is an epidemic, and that it almost killed me. And if I hadn't had my eldest sibling and these teachers, I would have died. I would have continued to spiral out of control. And that, for me, was a turning point also in my calling, because, I always imagined myself in the executive space doing the more left hemisphere, practical, tactical work that I'm also well equipped to do. And I realized, if other people may not know this, if I didn't know this, other people may not know this. They may not know that this is not normal. It's not normal to be good. Good is not a feeling. It's not normal to not be able to get up and do what you're passionate about because it's too fringe or it's too novel or people may judge you. There was a lot of layers that I had to peel back. And then I saw, like, no, there must be other people out there. And that's when things became supernatural and a little bit more mystical for me, because then I made almost a choice and a pact with the universe, with God. And I said, you brought me here. And I was throwing my hands up in misery a lot, going, what's happening? 2017, 2018, there was a lot of depression, a lot of angst, a lot of darkness, after all of these, the family, the tragedy, my own burnout, the trauma my parents experienced, and all of this. I came back and I realized, wow, this is something's got to give. And by that time I said, whatever you want from me, show me. And then again, things became mystical, and here we are 2.5 years later, where I'm really in line with my calling, that others can do this too, that it is a time in the collective consciousness for us to really peel back and be radically vulnerable and to bare our souls. Because that's, I believe, not only the way to step into health and wellness, I believe that's what's being asked of us as leaders in the paradigm moving forward. So that's some of the angst, some of the darkness, and the metamorphosis really was multidimensional, as you know, and I'm sure we'll cover more of it as we go along. So yeah, I almost didn't. There were a lot of dark moments of contemplating, throwing in the proverbial white towel and taking my life and really looking at it as, for me, the turning point came when there were more, miraculous interventions, the teachers, healers, and masters that came my way really all pointed me to one place, that this is all an inside game. And I kind of knew that. I had done meditation and other trainings and what have you. I was always, in the spiritual side. And I realized that it was a path of forgiveness. It's a path of, within us all, we're carrying shame, we're carrying angst, we're carrying guilt, we're carrying grief. We're really carrying old baggage, a proverbial cross on our back. And many of us as leaders are burdened with this, and there aren't avenues, opportunities, or really the culture isn't ready to embrace this. And that's, again, what we're hoping to continue to inspire and push forward and bring momentum and catalyze. And so for me, really the turning point was allowing and sitting in the darkness and allowing the emotions and everything that were percolating and suppressed for so long to come up, and experiencing every single one and feeling into every single one. and feeling into my rawness and my humanness, and really making peace and forgiveness with myself. As ontological as it sounds, the heart is almost alienated in many instances. And mine was a distant friend. My heart and I hadn't spoken in a very long time, if at all, maybe since my childhood. And I was almost like a floating head, you know? And one of my teachers really showed me in the stages of working with her, apprenticing and healing, that, you know, I see within you a lot of potential that you're not allowing. And why I wasn't allowing is I didn't think I was worthy. I'd amassed so much of these dark emotions and so much of this lower vibrational energy that I really didn't even see my own potential, my own light that everybody kept talking about. And she said something very beautiful. And she said, really, this is a path of forgiveness. This is a path of self-forgiveness, of self-love, or as I call it, you know, falling for myself, forgiving, accepting, and laughing, or loving myself, to then be able to laugh, L-A-F, laugh at myself, love, accept, and forgive. And it was hard. It was hard. You know, these things seem simple. There are a lot of contemporary thought leaders that, you know, Brene Brown and others that talk about it. And I sense that a lot of us aspire to do it, and then we get into it. And why the name of the show is a deep dive is I started to do a lot of this stuff. It wasn't until I hit rock bottom that I realized I needed to go deep. And so there is no real rock bottom. It was more of I had to go really deep into the valley, really go into that in order to be able to sit and see and experience all of these things that I was ignoring, and then make peace, forgive, and accept, and then start to build my way up through this rehabilitation of self-love, of self-worth, of, you know, it's okay. You know, I had gotten to a point where I thought I was despicable and I didn't love myself. And I can talk about it freely now because, again, the inner alchemy of taking dark energy, and many of us want to repel it. And I was repelling it, suppressing it, numbing myself. And I realized, oh, I'm only persisting this, that which we resist persists. And I realized, oh, once I accept it, once I bring it in, and Rumi, as you know, I've shared with you and many have heard this, the guest house, once I let everything in, I realized that there was no rock bottom. I was simply, the universe has a beautiful cosmic irony of peeling back our layers. We simply have to allow it. And I learned that I needed to allow more and more and more. And that's where allowing and self-forgiveness reached a nexus in my life. And that's really was the turning point, because then it was like a cycle of allow, okay, forgive this that's coming up because I'm allowing it to come up. Forgive this, allow, forgive. And I'm oversimplifying it. It's a generalization of two variables in this inner alchemy, in this metamorphosis, that then transformed these energies. You know, I became lighter, I'd become obese again, and gained 50 pounds after my brother's passing because I was engorging myself with emotional weight, essentially, and numbing myself with toxins, which wasn't helping my health. And so all of this started to peel off. And functionally, my health started to restore, which again, that's healing, right? We self-heal. And that's when I started to realize, wow, these self-forgiveness, self-love, self-acceptance, allowing will automatically restore the energies. And that's what happened. So it's almost like everything was automatic. I simply had to realize and allow that automaticness. And that's the point of the metamorphosis for me, was I didn't, in hindsight, see it as a rock bottom. I saw it as an ebb and a flow, that the more I allowed, the more steady these ebbs and flows got. And there weren't as many highs and lows. We always have that contrast. We can seek to find that middle path, that harmony. And that's what I really gained alchemically as a result. That was the golden pearl, the alchemy, the gold, or the philosopher's stone that came out of this, was that, that the middle path and the harmony comes from that balance, the healing, what have you, comes from the alignment, comes from that, from the alchemy of self-forgiveness and allowing, because then we allow the energies to do their thing. And they go into that flow state. So I would say two things. Yeah, that's good insight to add on. Two things. I would say my own mortality. You know, innately within human beingness and our human experience is vulnerability. We really are mortal. And I sensed that I had hidden that from myself. I had hidden and not accepted and not felt that it was safe to be human, to have my experience. And so, that was something that was interesting for me. That was something that was distinct, because what it showed me was I was suppressing that I am fallible. I was suppressing that the human condition, the human experience has imperfection in it. And I was so into wanting to be perfect, wanting to be in control, wanting to be that, type A, what I thought in the construct of a leader should be, I was suppressing that. No, it's okay. It's okay. If anything, it's okay to be messy. The heart and emotions, life, all of those things are messy, and that's okay. And the second, which also was something I didn't want to sit with, was how much suppression and how much I had really, I'd really kept in. And I didn't really want to make peace with how much I had started to loathe and hate myself. That's the end game. Deep down, I had come to a point where I was almost caught in a loop of past pains, of past shames.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to see that. And the more I didn't want to look at it, the more I wanted to look in another direction, coupled with this fallibility and this mortality, I started to say, okay. And that was another big aha, was the whole time I could have made my life easier. I could have made it, more easeful. And that's a choice that I have. Everything's a choice. And I started to regain and reclaim my personal responsibility, that the longer I suppress this, the longer I push this aside, or the longer I don't face the inevitability that life is about vulnerability, life is about the imperfections and the beauty of the imperfections and the human experience of it all, the more I realized, oh, wow, okay, and it picked up momentum from there, and that's when the magic continued to compile and bolster and amplify. One cannot see the ingredients from inside the bottle. If it weren't for the teachers that had come my way, I would not have been able to see it, because, the whole nature of being in a subjective human experience, it's darn near impossible to step into objectivity enough and say, oh, this is a loop, let me step out of it. And that's the issue. So I really had to surrender control to these teachers and guides. What I found was, up until my brother's passing, I had other coaches and teachers, and I had apprenticed before, and I didn't allow them fully in. I didn't allow the power in. I didn't allow that all in. And I was looking for big things, and I realized that there's subtlety. The magic and the profundity was in the subtlety. Some of the greatest truths are subtle. Some of the greatest magic is subtle. Some of the biggest miracles are subtle. And so I realized, oh, I'm missing things, because I keep thinking I know. I'm not surrendering control, and I'm not allowing the people I'm calling into my life and gravitating in to continue to help me 100%. I was still reserving. And then I realized, holy cow, like, I need to let them do their job. And then I started to accept and embrace and allow in and integrate the objectivity, because then I finally saw, and then the subtleties of, oh yeah, this, oh yeah, that. And then looking back to things I had journaled on 10 years ago that I knew was an issue, right? I've worked on this, I know this. And then it was like, no, if you had, it would have come to completion, that cycle. And there is something to be said about life as spirals, and we kind of get these lessons again. So I know they come back. It's more of the ignorance of thinking that I was out of them, when all along, Einstein's definition of insanity, I was doing the same thing in a sense over and over again, self-sabotaging because of all of these issues and what have you, and curbing my shine and precluding my flow, and really, constricting a lot of my energy and life force. And then I realized, oh, okay. And then that's when I started to find my inner guidance more and more, and then step more and more into this objective seat of, oh, that's a loop. Oh, that's a loop. So guidance, teachers, insights, and allowing, surrendering that control over, you know, of being that Daniel son from Karate Kid, and allowing the Mr. Miyagi's I'd called in to, you know, let me wax on, wax off. And, you know, the first few years I started to do inner work before my brother's passing and these turning points, I didn't want to do the wax on, wax off. You know, I was Daniel's son, kind of like when Mr. Miyagi was gone. Okay, I did the bare minimum. I'm good to go. And that's not the case. That's not going to create, as I realized, because I only created big change when I did deep work and 100% surrendered to the path. That's a good question.
Sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that you brought this up organically too. That the embodiment is the thing that many people miss, and forsaking knowledge for wisdom, or the, you know, to put it another way, embodiment is the foundational work that I had missed. And because I was so you know, strung out, my nervous system since childhood was so fried. And that's a whole big thing that I'm a proponent of understanding our nervous system. Given my neuroscience and my, you know, pre-med background, it helped my undergraduate and university studies to kind of embrace these truths that were coming my way, because I was blessed both by my sibling, eldest sibling, and some others to be on the frontier and exposed to the frontiers of medicine. And so the embodiment really showed me, okay, nervous system is fried. I'm not really taking the knowledge and applying it and really embodying the wisdom and having embodied leadership and being in alignment. And I realized even more that many people are doing this and that the foundations weren't there for many of us. And that's why it doesn't stick. So firstly, before you develop a habit, you got to excavate and you got to kind of look under the foundation as to what the old habits are. And that's the problem. Many people want to jump into the new and they don't want to, you know, take a look at the old and see, you know, what is it that I was doing? And so first I had to look at, okay, what was it that I was doing, and actually be honest with myself and bring a light of awareness to these things that were in my shadows. And then two, I had to rehabilitate a foundation in my body to then be able to then hold these higher vibrational truths and actually raise my frequency and bring myself into heightened states of power and potential. So embodiment's important. And then how you make it into a habit, it's habit may not be the word that I would use. It's regrooving. It's a line in the sand. You know, many of us have been doing the same thing over and over again and digging a line in the proverbial sand at the beach, to use this analogy. And what that means is all of a sudden you come in and you want to draw a new line, and people think, well, why doesn't it stick? Well, firstly, the embodiment and the foundational work needs to be there. And then secondly, it's practice. I wouldn't say habit as much as I would say practice to regroove. And with that, it took a lot of discipline to integrate, because you talk about that in your verbiage, to integrate. Yeah. So, you know, dig, see what it is that you have to get rid of and deconstruct it, and then allow the new stuff in when you have a solid foundation, calling in these higher vibrations, and then integrating them, right? Required dedicated practice, disciplined implementation, which for me was, I had a luxury because I had, you know, some projects and amassed some, you know, not much savings. And I was able to then meditate, do energy work, you know, go to healers, go to sages, trainings, etc., qigong, meditation, yoga, you know, you name it. I was immersing myself and doing, not learning, practice, which for me was new. And in fact, I literally had to learn to walk again. That was my initial qigong training, was learning how to stand functionally, be more in tune with my energy flow, and then to walk again and to develop the basics. Or as I call it, I had Icarus syndrome. I was, you know, like many leaders, trying to fly high when I wasn't equipped with the foundation, the embodiment, didn't have the alignment to do that. And again, that's what churned it for me, because then I started to regroove, and what you would call a habit emerged, because then I had regrooved that line in the sand so much. And a lot of it becomes automatic, because then you surrender and allow, and you become more in flow, and you allow nature to take its course. And that, you know, that's the beautiful thing. You don't have to do much. You have to be much. And I had to be, I had to be much, and I wasn't being much most of my life. So that was the issue I was doing. And that, as you know, that's not going to get you anywhere, because, we're in the material world and there's an energetic or soul level. And the more you do here within, the more impact it has down here. And that's a very profound and subtle truth that I started to embody and embrace, and stopped doing and started, slowing down, and, from go to slow, and embracing that stillness to afford myself the opportunities to do the regrooving and to develop those habits.
I'm curious if you could share that with us.
So you're going to have to wait for the first book, which is coming out soon. How I Used to Be a Jerk and I Didn't Know It. My Journey to Art-Centered Leadership. In a nutshell, I would say I was numb and disassociated and didn't know it. Everybody would ask me how I'm doing, and I had a mask, and it was very karmic that I had to hold it all together. I had to have the veneer of everything's fine, everything's good, I'm polished, and that strength is not revealing your weaknesses. There was a lot of that. There was hypervigilance in my nervous system. I was on guard since childhood because of some of these earlier emotional traumas and experiences that were energetically induced. And I realized more and more that I was a jerk. I didn't, maybe not by everybody else's standards. Everybody, still was like, oh, this guy's nice. And deep down, I didn't know how to love. I was in codependent relationships that were, deep down undertones of resentment and toxicity that were lurking. Maybe not like, again, as bad as some people experience, none of that. It was still, by my standards now, bad. I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't happy in my job. I mean, I was seeking to serve people more in an energetic and in a more holistic way, and I wasn't doing it out of fear of judgment. And that led to also, copaesthetic, coping mechanisms. I wasn't drinking that much. What I did would be, turbo. I'd go zero, play hard, party, work hard, play hard. And that's not a sustainable lifestyle. And I realize now that was a numbing agent. And, I take part in libations occasionally now. I don't have the yearning for it because I can get high on my own supply rather than having to induce it. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's more of, I started to realize, wow, there's masks, there's dis-ease, I'm disconnected, I'm numb, I'm desensitized. Now I realize the full breadth of emotions that I can feel. And then I was maybe limited to feeling bare bones, anything. And really at the end of the day, I wasn't being real. I wasn't being real with myself and those around me. And that was all, it's all one big ball. It started to come into one, big snowball, as it were, because all of this led to me perpetuating these loops and these cycles. So in a nutshell, I was desensitized, disconnected. I was sad and didn't know it. I was shameful and didn't know it. I was, didn't know how to love and didn't know it. And I had really strayed away from God, source, and my light, and didn't know it. So it was a dimming cycle of spiraling downwards. And that became normal. That was the scary part. It became normal. And I realized everybody, is probably used to a standard of, oh, this is good. And we may dip below it. And I was like everybody, this is good. And I realized, whoa, there's a whole lot more in how we can show up and operate, perform, and feel fulfilled that I hadn't allowed or pondered, or really, I should say, imagined, and that was another thing. So, I thought I was good, that was the scary part. Everything's good. Everything's fine. I gotta hold it together, and if I keep doing this, and that's why my brother died, he held it together for so long that he ate himself up. Because that's what happens. You can't hold it together. We're not here to hold it together. We're here to let it all fall apart and fall into place. We're swimming in a fishbowl of conditioning, and we don't even know it. Or as my eldest sibling imparted, you're a fish in water and you don't even know it. You can't tell. When a fish is in water, a fish doesn't know what's the water and what's it. The identity and the environment become one. The being and that's we become part of the Maya, part of the illusion. and we think we are the matrix, and we're not, you know. And there's this notion of you got to take yourself out of that water, out of that environment, out of that conditioning. And that is the scariest part of transformation for most. It was for me, because everybody, you know, the Linus blankets that I had amassed of my safety zone and things that were my comforts were difficult to let go of is one thing. I had to leave the shore of what I knew and go into really this uncharted territory. And boy, did I go far into it, because I was a way shower and I didn't know it at that time, that I was being groomed to lead and show others this path of transformation. And so, yeah, that's the most grueling and scary part, is that you have to leave your water. You have to leave all of these things. And it takes deep disciplined work. And there are easeful ways of approaching it. It's simply a little painful perceptually at first to do that, you know, ripping off of that Band-Aid. And the longer I resisted doing this deep work, the deeper and more entrenched I got. So it's almost like a catch-22. The more we delay it in life, the more our heart becomes closed off and encrusted, the more we lose our insight, the more our energy fades and our light dims, and the wick of that, you know, cosmic candle that we carry fades. And then the more we have to rehabilitate it. And in some instances we can't, God forbid. And in my brother's instance, that was it. My sibling, you know, couldn't come back from it. And that's when that turning point that I'm intending to inspire, that no one ever reaches that, you know. And I came close to that edge of that proverbial abysmal cliff, because once you get too low and too stuck and too mired in it, it's damn near impossible. And that's the key word. We get damned. We choose damnation of ourselves, and we perpetuate our own hell. And that's, again, for anybody listening that may be somewhere in that zone, this is the light. This is the hope we're instilling, it's not as bad as you may think. I mean, it could be bad. It's more of this notion of acceptance and realizing that, oh, okay, I can turn it around because I've created this, you know, and I have to allow and I have to surrender. So I digress. So we've kind of covered that. You know, it's funny because I came out the gate 4 years ago, and I thought my legal practice was going to become more holistic, and then I would do what I was coining relational alchemy, and doing work in the executive space to help teams as a facilitator and facilitating team alchemy and team change and transformation. And really, that was in 2017. I realized, well, I shouldn't say I realized, I thought, right, I'd reached a point in my process. I'm good to go. I was starting to heal myself. I was starting to have these realizations, starting to get these teachers that were teaching me these deeper truths, and I was allowing these truths in and assimilating and integrating and up-leveling. And then I realized, oh, wow. And I had, I guess you could say, some other experiences that further showed me that, no, you're not quite done. Keep going. And that's when I thought it was going to be healing. And so I guess for me, there's a cautionary tale before I answer that question, because we oftentimes think we're done peeling the layers, as I had, and then we stop and we go, I'm good, and we go. And it's not really for us to birth what we're here to do. It's really for it to be birthed through us. And we have to sit, I realized, and allow myself to marinate and cook. And, you know, I did some marketing and branding faux pas, because I prematurely launched things and realized, oh, which is fine. It's all learning opportunities. It was more of, had I actually allowed the process to naturally unfold, I would have seen that it wasn't even healing. It was, I have an ability to show people the light and allow them to bring in higher frequency energies. And that was why I got sick, because I realized that my whole life I had high energy, because I carried higher vibrational energy, and I was intense by other people's definition and phraseology. And I realized, once I sat and allowed, the last 6-7 months, I realized the common denominators and truths started to appear, because I stopped, you know, shaking up the bottom of the water. We're all in water. And the analogy was, we kick up dust and then we can't see it, and our vision gets cloudy, and then we kind of let it settle a little bit, and we go, oh, I think I can see my calling. I think it's a healer. And then, you know, again, we still haven't really allowed. And when the dust settled, I realized, oh, when people leave me in any circumstance, my whole life, you know, oh, I feel lighter talking to you, or, you know, we solved your legal problem and I felt like relieved. And so I realized, oh, I show up and create a space for other people to enter into, to transform any blockages that are in the way of them allowing their fullest energy and higher self and soul to come in. So in a way, my process, my dark night became who I am, because I realized I went through that to shape me, to then burst me open so I could then see my raw essence, and then allow my raw essence to come through. And then that's it. That's the future of leadership. As I say, we're not going to be, it's not what we do. It's going to matter who we are and how we show up. So I'm a capacitor and an alchemist in that sense, because when I create that space for leaders and teams, I allow them this alchemy to happen and catalyze these breakthroughs, which then allow more of that higher potential energy to come down so they can create, heal, envision, create insights with it, and then be able to harness and then use that. So also accelerating their growth. So in a lot of ways, I bring that light forward and show others how they can do the same. And I had to go through the deepest darkness, you know, in order to find my own light. And I realized, oh, that's perhaps why we all have our unique experiences, because then we contribute that. And that became another part of my mission, that I want to shine bright so others shine bright. So we shine bright together, because it's this unique tapestry. It's a collective network and you know, framework of all of these lights. And when we all light up, that's when the evolution of you know, our expansion and our ascension as a collective species, as a collective a cosmic collective as well, will elevate. And so that then became another aspect and element and dimension to my craft of bringing forth the collective light. And really my motto, and I realized this the last 2 or 3 months, became, how can I bring light here now? And anything I'm doing and anywhere I'm being, you know, whether it be a family dynamic, whether it be interacting on the show now, whether it be with a one-on-one client, or whether it be with a team client, is how can I bring the fullest light here through me, through them, through the ecosystem? And that really started to become more and more clear as I allowed this metamorphosis to really cook me, mold me, shape me, and birth me through.
So what I'm hearing is you are a light capacitor. And that's your craft of really bringing light to people, like allowing people to see their own light. Is that? So
there's multiple dimensions. Yeah. Seeing their light, as in seeing their potential, what they could be, actually bringing in raw light energy, which is higher vibrational energy. So as you know, multiple dimensions to it that I characterize as the light that we all hold, that potential, that power, that higher vibrational energy. So I get the garbage, I get the crap out of the way. So we carry old energy. So I believe you have 4 subsystems that make up our collective consciousness system. We have our soulscape, or the energy. We have the mindscape, the heartscape, and then the biophysical. And really what ends up happening is the energy comes down, and then we accumulate shit. We accumulate garbage. And how it shows up in the mind is limiting beliefs, constructs. You know, we've developed thought forms. And then in the heart, we block it, we constrict it by old energies that we don't feel, or we develop emotional charges, toxicity. And then that also results in functional dis-ease and health problems. In a lot of instances, over time, we can disconnect from our light or our soul altogether. And we have a lot of that in society now, where people are like zombies, automatic, and they're not in their bodies. Their energetic awareness and soul's not back. And so there's various avenues, obviously, depending on the clients, the methods I employ, because they're integrative. Generally speaking, in the mind, we want to dissolve the mind constructs, the limiting beliefs, the identity constructs, etc. Why? Because then we expand the mind and we create we expand the upper limits. And that then allows more energy to flow through the mind, through neurotransmissions and, the neurological functionality of what happens. And then also in the heart, we then want to neutralize and dissolve emotions. And so there's different methods that I employ to do that in order to activate the heart so it's functioning again. A lot of people are numb and don't know it, and they've constricted their heart off, and they can't literally, they may be able to feel, they may not be able to feel to the extent that they're supposed to as a being. And so we want to open the heart, and there's ways of doing that, and then actually allowing the old junk to come out and neutralizing the old charges, traumas, angst, etc., and clearing that out. So it's a lot of clearing out, right? And then that helps the body heal, because we're storing those energies, and that then results in biological disease. And then at a soul level, I employ a lot of mystical and spiritual tools for practical impact by really allowing people to reconnect with their soul, actually develop a bond again. And it sounds esoteric. It's not. There's a practicality to it. There's ancient sciences, ancient mysticism, and new sciences that merge on this. And it used to be known as the ascension sciences, for instance, in the mystical orders. And so it's really allowing then you to reconnect with not only this higher power source that's known as your soul or your higher self, to bring fragments of yourself back. A lot of people disassociate. A lot of people, they realize, oh, I don't remember my childhood much. Okay, well, that's possibly, as Professor Dispenza says, Joe Dispenza, because we're in the past and the future concurrently, quantum physically speaking, that a part of you is still lost in that childhood. And that's why you don't remember. And I personally started to have a flood of childhood remembrances come back, which I always remember things. I have an impeccable intelligence, which is strange and extraordinary in that sense. Still even more remembrances. So at a soul level, what that looks like is we want to bring the fragments back, reconnect the soul, and then bring all of the soul into the body and get back to that embodiment and embody these higher frequencies. That's when the deeper mastery work comes in, because then that's when I work with more advanced students and leaders and trained, because then they're ready to then do more up leveling and then develop their extrasensory gifts, their superpowers, and then things can get even more fascinating and interesting. And as you know, it becomes bewildering at first, because people are like, holy cow, I didn't know I could do that, let alone I didn't know I had special gifts, or I could manifest this quickly, or I could create this much abundance, or I didn't think I would have this much impact in life. And so that's when the real magic can get profound. So that's in a nutshell what it looks like. Yeah, it's interesting, because I realized that the magic only extends as far as your belief allows it to. So disbelief is our greatest hindrance to owning our full power. Disbelief within ourselves, disbelief of the world around us, disbelief of what can be, limitations on that from the mind, disbelief from the heart, etc. So for me, I realized that my extrasensory gifts, being able to really see the energy field and clear cognizance of being able to really read people and access information about them and energy about them that they themselves may not have known. So in a way, being able to actually access the mainframe of the cosmos and individuals, and then realizing that I had intuitive gifts, I was able to then sense and feel energies in others, and then with practice be able to move those energies. And that's very advanced mastery that takes time and discipline. And then I realized in addition to that I could weave my practical gifts with my spiritual gifts, and they are reconciled. They are, you can amalgamate them. You can fuse these two worlds together and bring that forth in a craft. And that was also another interesting thing, because then I could use both sets of skills. So other than the things that we've already covered, I would say that really the key is transparency with yourself. Really, we're in a remarkable time, and this is calling us all forward to bring the light of awareness to our own shadows and our collective shadows. So having the personal responsibility and choosing the personal responsibility to pull back my layers and to radically look at and be radically transparent with myself, and then share that with the world. That was a huge turning point for me in realizing, which dovetails vulnerability. It's this notion of it's okay to get transparent. It's okay to be real with yourself first. I'm not okay was my biggest first transparent realization, is I'm not okay. I wasn't okay then. And I realized, okay, that's huge, you know, as they say, stepping from denial to acceptance, because I had to be real and transparent within. I had to like look within and transparently say, this is really what's happening. Not what I'd like to see happening, not what I think is happening, not what I've been told and indoctrinated will happen. What is actually happening? What's actually going on right now? And then in addition to that is allowing. And what I mean by that, in addition to what I've already said about allowing, is allowing yourself to surprise yourself. You know, a lot of the times we're waiting for the outside to surprise us, and we miss the surprises that we are. As I put in a post recently, I had the epiphany, and what God and the universe spoke through me said that you are the miracle you're waiting for. You know, I realized that I had to allow my magic to come through, and I had to allow myself to surprise myself and to save myself. And so it all goes back for me. This tip, so to speak, would be, you have the power within you. You are the power in your world. Make the choice, when in conjunction with the radical transparency, to exercise your personal responsibility, to exercise your power, and by declaring it and proclaiming it, and then being willing to look within and look at the mess that you may be in within. Look at the dis-ease or the sadness and allow and accept them. That's going to be a huge tipping point, because then the universe will respond and nature will respond to serve and conspire to serve your expansion and your getting back into the light, because that's the inevitability. It's all okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end, which means we're all headed towards expansion and light. It's going to happen for us one way or the other. It's a matter of getting out of our own way and allowing it to happen, which requires the choice, the personal responsibility, with the transparency that, I was stopping and resisting my own path. I was blocking my own growth. I was, a contributing factor in a lot of my own misery. I created my own hell. I was numbing myself with drugs and alcohol. And a lot of those things, I didn't have close relationships. I had to say, I choose to look at this, and then say, I'm going to look at it and radically be transparent. And now I share that, because now that's my next phase of it, is introducing that in around me and inspiring and leading by being, in the sense that then others can see, it's not that scary. If anything, it's been liberating. It's been freeing, because I can be myself, and there are no secrets. I don't have to hide things from people, and they'll find this. And then I can, then it's not only liberating, it's cathartic, it's freeing, and then you can really start to grow. And then I became this being, new skills and art, and what I used to think was weird, then I started to hone in on, embrace, and I realized that was growing, that was happening. New branches and things started to grow from there. So I digress. So that would be, in a sense, exercise your personal responsibility, declare the choice, be intentional, willfully declare the choice, and then be willing to radically be transparent with yourself and with those around you. Hey, I'm going through changes. I can't be, a lot of this became scary after I did the inner work, because then I had to change the interactions around me that no longer served. So I had to learn courageous conversations to be radically transparent. I can't be friends with you if you continue these behaviors in these low vibrational states. I may have a different path, and that's then carried over to my relationships, to my calling, to everything. I start to then unveil my soul and say, okay, I'm going to share myself radically transparent with the world. And that is easily synonymous with vulnerability. That's hand in hand with vulnerability. Vulnerability is the willingness to show it. And then the transparency is then sharing it, So it all starts within. That which we do within, we'll do without outside of us. That I brought a smile to the world, that everybody felt their shine, their light, and we could all co-create a sustainable planet where we're all living in community, and really everybody sees the cosmic game that this is, and we're all able to smile, have fun, be loving, and to freely flow the energy through us, into us, and around us, and to really bring forth that global spark, and really remind people within themselves that not only are we here to play, not only is it supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be easeful, and to bring out that light and laughter. One that comes forward right away is this notion of you got to lose your mind to find your senses. And, you know, what I mean by that is so many of the things that we are habituated to are in our mind, and our greater senses are really in our heart. And I had to drop down and lose the mind constructs to find my extrasensory or real gifts, real truth, real guidance system. So that would be one. And then the other would be really Nikola Tesla, who is a very, very powerful, I guess you could say, role model in the sense of, you know, understanding the secrets of the universe in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That a lot of these universal truths are very simple, and we are very much about embodied wisdom, about owning our frequency, being aware and in tune, and being able and mindful and intentional with our inner energies and the energies around us. And then lastly, two more. One is Joseph Campbell, which I love this one, and I've been using it more and more, which I found last year, was a mystic can swim in the waters that a psychotic drowns in. That this path, not the regular work I do, as you know, the advanced programs that I offer are not for everybody. And some of the leaders that I'm here to awaken to their ascended light. It at first can seem bewildering because it becomes very supernatural, very powerful, and very dialed in and very magical and synchronistic. And so it's embracing that and realizing that maybe, as the Mad Hatter said, you know, maybe the world is mad. Really, maybe we're all mad in the sense, and the real insanity is thinking we're sane, you know, and that the world is really constant flux and chaos, and we're simply trying in human form to make sense of it. So, and then lastly, this quote by Marianne Williamson, which really I found on my sabbatical. The quote while I was in Europe, doing this, you know, experiment on myself of putting myself out of my element and out of my mind in a uncharted waters without knowing what I'm going to be doing, quote unquote. And I found this quote that said, the ego is waiting for everything to fall in place to find its peace. And the heart says, find your peace, then everything will fall into place. And that's the moral of the story for really, I didn't plan this. It's a great ending point for today's show, because that sets up the theme of this series, which is this notion of a lot of the times where we're trying to lead with our head, and it's really about leading with our heart. This has a wealth of wisdom and a wealth of access to higher dimensional energies. Our soul speaks through our heart, and that's it. Lead with your heart and trust your heart.